Okay. So next slide, please. So just a quick refresher. So inhaling radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers, and it's the second cause of lung cancer in those who do smoke. And it makes the risk much, much worse for those who smoke. So it's not just the second leading cause, it actually has a multiplicative effect. So really increasing the danger for those who do smoke. But for those who don't smoke at all and who maybe weren't thinking of lung cancer at all, radon tends to be the leading cause. Next slide, please. So we are exposed to radon here in Canada, mostly from the indoor air. Radon comes from the ground. It is naturally occurring. It can be measured in outdoor air, but it tends to be found at higher concentrations inside homes and other buildings where we spend a lot of time, especially during the colder months. Radon enters our homes and buildings through cracks in the floor or the foundation walls, and these don't need to be big cracks. It's present in every single building that has ground contact. Larger cracks will simply give it an easier time of getting into the building. Around drains or sumps. Because it comes from the ground, generally radon levels are higher in the basement of a building and in any room that has ground contact. And then the radon levels tend to be lower as you go up through the building. But of course, this depends on the building and it depends on the ventilation system, but it's a good rule of thumb. Next slide, please. So the risk of lung cancer increases with the radon level. So here we've got a chart with the radon level on the left. So under 100 becquerels per meter cubed or 1 to 199 becquerels per meter cubed are shown in green because those are both below the Canadian guideline level for radon in our homes. So the lifetime risk of lung cancer is at 1 or 1.5% there for those who don't smoke. For those who do, the lifetime risk of lung cancer is at 12 and 15%. So this is if you're living in a home with radon at these levels. Once we get to 2 to 600 and then 600 and over, so a reminder, 200 becquerels per meter cubed is the Canadian guideline level. So those levels are shown in red because Health Canada recommends anything at 200 or above that you take action to lower your radon levels. So for those who don't smoke, the lifetime risk of lung cancer is at 2 to 4, and it just goes up with an increasing radon level. We do occasionally see radon levels in the thousands of becquerels, so there would be an increased risk as you go up in those radon levels. And if you're living in a home with radon levels in those ranges and you also smoke, then you're looking at a lifetime risk of lung cancer of from 17 through 26%. And of course, even higher if your radon level is very high. So these are really high risks. So we're glad that you're joining us today to learn about what you can do to lower your risks by lowering that radon level. Next slide, please. So this year we simplified our messaging. So if you participated in our 100 Radon Test Kit Challenge this year, you would have seen on a little PDF that we sent with your radon report, these green and red boxes over on the left. So now Health Canada underneath 200, they say it's within the guideline level and they suggest that you consider retesting within the next 5 years. Radon levels can vary, especially with the climactic changes that we're seeing in Canada. We've heard reports that sometimes, after several years of drought, maybe radon levels are higher. Again, like think of what it's doing to the ground. Sometimes after many years of rain, construction in the region, renovations within your own home, those are all reasons to retest your home for radon. So that's if you were below the guideline level. If you are above the guideline level at 200 becquerels per meter cubed or higher, then Health Canada recommends that you take action to reduce your radon levels within a year. So that's about it. This is an image, radon gas. It's in your home from Health Canada. You can find their publications on their website. Okay, so I think now that we've had a little refresher of the risks and the guideline level, I'll pass it over to Pam to talk about the mitigation systems.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Okay, so from just a basic perspective, the image kind of just shows the components of a radon mitigation system. And radon mitigation is the most effective way of reducing radon levels. We've seen it, even really high levels. So a level over 2,000 comes to under 200 or even under 50 becquerels. And, obviously anything like 400, 600, less than that, also down to really low levels. So it's really effective in reducing even high levels to quite low. And it involves a pipe that provides a pathway for the gas. And so, as Erin mentioned, the radon gas comes from our soil. It is a gas, so it moves from the soil into our homes through a change of air pressures. And so the pipe provides a pathway for the gas to go up and out of the house and be discharged outside without coming into your home. And then there's a fan on it that's properly sized for your home. And so there is a standard for how this should be installed, and the fan should be properly sized for your home. And the footprint should be airtight. So there should be sealing to ensure that the foundation of the home is airtight. And then it can work most effectively. And so it's a really simple system, requires relatively low maintenance. There's a fan attached, so there may be a possibility of having to replace the fan, but that's really the only maintenance required. And so there's a couple photos of, a system in place. Often, so they should have some type of method to monitor the fan. And so there's one that looks like this, which is a YouTube manometer. There is also electronic ones. So this one has an electronic monitor, an alarm that goes off if the fan were to stop working, then it would make a noise as well. And then it doesn't need to be a concrete foundation. So there are systems included that would be in a subslab or crawl space submembrane systems. So in this case, there would be a membrane installed to provide that foundation, and then pipe would go down into that below that membrane, and then it would go up and out of the house, discharge out as well. And so you could just see a couple pictures of different ways that this could be installed. So into the membrane itself, or there may be some plumbing, sump pit or fixtures or whatever that might be utilized. But they in the crawl space, but they must be all sealed as well. So you can see here, this is just ensuring that it's an airtight seal around all fixtures in it. And then the membrane does need to be fixed to the perimeter, so to the wall of the crawl space, and a seal as well there. And then if you do need to reduce your radon levels, then we do have a national certification program in Canada. So we do have a certified professionals that you can look to. They are in every province across the country. And if you go to cnrpp.ca, you'll see a red button, and you can go and search in your area to find radon professionals. And then we do have some questions to ask. So sometimes, for most of us, this is a relatively new thing. It's something that you likely only have to deal with once, unless you change homes. And so we do have questions here to help you with differentiating how to hire one person over another. So again, we look for somebody who is CNRPP certified, but then here's some questions that you can ask, and then some things that you can consider about a well-installed system. And so I will come back to that. I think we've got a couple questions on some of those things, but we just also wanted to note a couple other things. So there is a national grant available for people if they do have high radon levels. You do need to test for that minimum of 91 days. And then you need a quote from a CNRPP professional. And then you also need you need to qualify. So either you have lung cancer, that's one way to qualify, But for many that don't and that are doing this preventively, there is an income qualification. And so you can go on to the Canadian Lung Association. I've put the web link there, but you can also just Google Canadian Lung Association Radon Mitigation Grant, and you can find the information on their website. They do post the median incomes that they use for qualifying these grants on their website, so you can go and see if you would qualify before you apply. But you do need to include everything before applying for a grant. So just watch for that. Make sure that your application is completed. And you also need to apply before you get any work done. So that's another thing to make sure that you don't start the work before you've been approved for the grant. Okay, and then just one thing, two things, I guess, before. We also just want to let anybody know that's in BC. So if you have had a radon test higher than 800 becquerels, BC has a pilot program for a low-dose CT scan. So this is to have your lungs checked, a lung health check. There is one in the Kelowna Cancer Center, and then there is also an option, I believe, in the Vancouver Center. And so there's a phone number here that you can call and an email address, and we'll put that in the chat before the end. So that if you do have a test that is above 800. If you're close to 800 but not above, I would certainly call as well. They're interested in supporting you. Oh, and you do need to, I think, have lived in the house for 3 years or more. So that's another qualification. Okay, so often one of the questions that we get is how, people have received their radon report, but they're not quite sure on how to read it. So we have a couple examples, and so you can see these are templates, so they're sort of made up information. But we tried to put a couple of examples of a few of the different labs so that you can check it out. And there should be a radon number on each of the report. So on these different companies, they use a table, and so you can see the radon report. We do also recommend that you check the start and the end date just to make sure it matches what you were anticipating. But the radon report number or the radon number under the becquerel column is the one to pay attention to. That's your radon level. And then they do have some of these links and such for the recommendation. Now, with this lab, they have the same, it looks a little bit different. So the radon number is in at the end of the line here. And then next to it is a plus or minus. And so in addition to the radon reported number, they also put right away the margin of error. So it's sort of, it could be up or down this amount. And so we often get questions about the margin of error. So in this one, they show it right away next to the radon number. In some of the other reports, they'll show it in the body of the data. And with every measurement, there is just a natural margin of error. And so as a lab, they disclose that. But if you're trying to make a decision and you're deciding, where in this margin, in this range, do I make a decision? The number that they have reported on is what they consider as your reported level. And that should be the decision-making level. And so that's what that's what they're giving you as guidance for making a decision. Okay, so I'm just going to go backwards a little bit to a couple things and pause and answer some questions.
Are you ready for questions?
Yeah.
Yes. Great. So we've received a number of questions. I'm just going to do a quick overview before I throw some your way, Pam.
Perfect.
So we received, is there anything in Ontario like in BC for the health check? And at the moment there isn't. However, we are spreading the word. This is a very new program, even in BC. So we're really sharing it with all the other provinces and with the decision makers and doctors in other provinces, hoping they get inspired and they want to roll something similar out in their provinces. Also, depending where you are located, so Pam shared the Lungs Matter grant program that's offered by the Canadian Lung Association, which is open to people across Canada. In certain regions, there are other funding programs. In Ontario, there's the Tarian Home Warranty Program that will cover the cost of a radon mitigation if your home is 7 years old or younger. There are some grant programs offered by the Nova Scotia and PEI Lung Association. And in Quebec, in a very limited number of municipalities, they offer some grant programs as well. I believe that's all we're aware of for the moment, but we're trying to support other groups as they and other regions as they roll out more funding programs. Okay, so to throw one at you, Pam. First question we received today. I have spoken to several radon mitigation companies who use either foam, fans, membrane, etc., and they all say the other methods are not effective. It's very confusing for a homeowner.
Okay. Yeah, so I would first check and see if they are CNRPP certified. There are a lot. We are seeing a number of trades getting in and learning that, there's a market for radon and sort of utilizing the services that they know for radon mitigation. However, if they are CNRPP certified, then you know that they have been trained to standards and that the methods that they're using are ones that fit their training and fit our standards. But I'll break this down a little bit. So as I mentioned, a fan is an important part of a radon mitigation system. When a home is newly constructed, there's passive systems installed, but if you've already tested and you have a high level, then an active system should be installed. So that should be utilizing pipes and fan. If your home has a crawl space, then utilizing a membrane is important. And certainly using spray foam could be an option. There is a standard that spray foam needs to meet, and so it should be rated as a barrier. So it should meet that standard. Because there's a variety of different qualities of spray foam. But then there also is different workmanship that goes into place. So their spray foam must create a well-sealed barrier, an airtight barrier. There are certain restrictions in order to do that need to go into a place when it's being used. So it's only useful in some locations and some applications, but not all. So, if someone were to tell me, oh, spray foam is an automatic way of creating a barrier and sealing radon out, I would say no. But if they're utilizing it in combination with other things, then it certainly has shown to be, a useful tool.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Okay, some quick ones. That was a long one. How long does it take to install a radon mitigation system?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, it's within a day. So I was talking to a mitigators yesterday, and sometimes they'll have a really easy day. Sometimes it's a longer day. But unless it's a complicated system, it should be installed in a day.
Great. A question about testing. Is Airthings Currentium Home a good radon monitor to use?
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. And so we do have a list on, so if you go to the CNRPP website, there is a list of electronic radon monitors that we have researched and that are approved. And yeah, that certainly is one that Airthings is a brand that has been approved.
Great. Okay, here's a specific one, and I've done some research to help you out. I live in Lethbridge, and my levels are elevated from the test that we did earlier this year. I contacted the only mitigator in our area. He came out and looked at our home. We asked numerous questions and requested a quote. That was in April of this year, and we have not heard back from them. This is a certified mitigator. Is there someone else that I can go to try and get some pricing? So I'll just jump in here and say, so I looked on our find a professional list for your region, and I see that indeed within 50 or 100 kilometers, that is the only professional. However, I would encourage you to maybe expand your net a little bit, like Calgary's not that far away. And I know it might be further than you might go for your average service. But because radon has been a smaller field for many years, a lot of our professionals are very used to traveling, a few hours to do a job. It is an all-day job. It is a specialized field. So I would encourage you to reach out to some of the professionals who are a little further afield, perhaps. We certainly have some excellent professionals in the Calgary area. And I'll say one more thing and then let Pam get a word in edgewise if she has something to add. But we were also modifying the way that we list our professionals. We're about to launch a new CNRPP website, and we're going to add something called service areas, which we hope will help you with this. So that the professionals, it won't just be that they're listed either by province or by proximity via postal code, because some of them are going to be much happier to travel to your region, and they'll consider it one of their main service areas, even if they aren't, even if they aren't listed as being close to you. So that's coming soon. And this is one of the reasons that we're rolling it out, is so that you'd be able to, choose your region where you live, and you'll find everyone who has said, yeah, I'm interested in working in this service area.
Yeah.
So I hope that that can help you.
Yeah, and then I mean, you might just want to reach out to them one more time and check in. Certainly, there's been a rise in awareness. So some of our mitigation professionals who maybe weren't busy at a point because of low awareness, when we've done a project, they may be just busier. So not a bad idea to try again.
Okay, I've got another question here. Is there anything you can do yourself in your home to reduce levels?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We so there's one simple thing, and that is if you have an HRV already installed in your home, sometimes the HRV, so that's a heat recovery ventilator or an ERV, energy recovery ventilator, can get clogged. So there's filters on the outside of the system that can be clogged so that you can the way that these systems work is they provide fresh air coming into the home and they remove conditioned air. And the filter for the fresh air side can get clogged. So if you haven't taken time to maintain your HRV, now is a good time to do that. Or it sometimes gets out of balance. So you could check with contractor to see about getting that balanced. And sometimes if you've already have that installed, that could help with reducing radon levels. And so we do actually recommend that if you have an HRV in your house, that you would have an electronic radon monitor to monitor, because if that, because levels can change. Um, then if any other measures, so it's a common question that we get. We do caution people that it looks like a really easy system, but there are things to consider when you're installing. You want to make sure that the footprint of the foundation is well sealed. And I'll just go back to kind of the simplified picture here. And then you also want to consider that there could be areas that you don't see that could be air leakage. And so, this is a really simplified concrete floor. But if you have plumbing fixtures such as a shower or a tub, sometimes there's an open space under them that can be an air gap. If you've got other openings in the concrete floor, a sump pit or other openings for whatever reason, the furnace sometimes can be open under it as well. The concern with that is that when you install a pipe and a fan to draw air on the subslab space, what can happen is it can, draw air down into it. So you're losing, nice warm air from your conditioned home into your subslab space and now discharging that outside. So, I mean, it's obviously a waste of heating that air, but the bigger concern is that it could be a carbon monoxide risk. So if you've got a fireplace or gas-fired appliances that need that make up air, you could be at risk of backdrafting. So you want to be cautious there. But on the flip side, if you do have some openings, sealing is not a bad thing. So if you've got a sump pit, that could be something that you look at getting a proper cover to fit on that and sealing around the edges. If you have um, other openings that you can seal, that's other things that you can take a look at. Um, And then the other thing is that the floor to wall joint often is an air leakage as well. And so that could be something that you look at that needs to be sealed. So that's another area. But your capabilities, it's hard to tell. So, we do want to caution against that there's sort of some things to consider if you are doing a do-it-yourself system.
Great. Okay, I've got two related questions, so I will read you the first one. In my basement, there is a functioning sump pit that is not sealed. Two questions. Is this a source for radon gas to enter the basement and house? And does this impact the efficiency of a radon mitigation system?
Yeah, so great questions. So you can see, as I mentioned before, yes, it should be sealed. A sump pit is a really effective way for the radon to come into a home. It typically is a system that collects water from underneath your house, but if your water table is low in a season, it can collect air. So now it can increase the radon levels in the air in your home. So yeah, an airtight seal is important. There are some aftermarket products that you can look at buying, or there's some, creative ways to install a cover, but just think about creating an airtight seal, but also consider something that could be removable and then sealed again, because you certainly want to be able to replace your sump pit or check your sump system. And then, yes, and this is something that would need to be sealed. So as I mentioned, if you're drawing air on the subslab space, you don't want something open that's going to be drawing it down. So it would have to be sealed anyways. It would make this system more efficient, but it would also protect your conditioned space from that depressurization. So yeah, that's important for a mitigation system to have that sealed as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so and now there's just a second half to another question on sump pits. If radon enters in cracks in sump pits, would all cracks in the concrete floor need to be airtight? Um, and then we've already dealt with the sump pit sealing. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a tricky question about the cracks. Some of them are superficial and some of them would go deeper. Um, so it's hard to tell from house to house which cracks need to be sealed. Um, so I would say, if you're looking yourself to do some things, sealing the cracks isn't going to be a bad thing. But if you're spending a lot of money and time sealing a lot of them, you may want to get some advice before you put some things into that, some, investment of time and money into it. One simple trick that I would do when I go into a basement is you can throw a Kleenex on top of a crack. It works best in the winter when it's cold and you can see a bit of air movement. It's not a foolproof and it's not like a guaranteed it doesn't need to be sealed, but it's a quick one to see. If it moves the Kleenex, then there's probably air coming in and that probably would be a crack that needs to be sealed.
yeah, and I'll just add that when our professionals, certified professionals, go into homes to install a radon mitigation system, there's this part that you see on the screen. But then a lot of them emphasize with us how much of their day, Pam already answered the question, how long does it take to install a system? Generally within a day. And a lot of them are spending like half to three quarters of that day sealing that perimeter joint between the floor and the walls, any major cracks, any voids beneath furnaces, voids under plumbing like showers, bathtubs. So they do a lot of sealing. And they have some special equipment that they bring in to also see which cracks are the big culprits that really need sealing and which ones like are just superficial. Oh, here's a quickie that I can answer. Yes, we're recording today's webinar so that we can post it on our website so that it will be a resource for those who couldn't join us or who have questions in the future. Here's one for you, Pam. What is the typical price range to install a mitigation system?
Yeah, great question. And we did research over a few years from 2000, or sorry, 2020 to 2023-ish on the costs of radon mitigation and saw that on average across the country, it's between $3,000 and $5,000. It can range if in geography. So there are some areas that are where it might be a little bit different, but most often it changes if the house is more complex. So things like a really large footprint of a house, more architecturally designed, so it creates challenges for them to, get the pipe up and out. Um, Historic. So, in much of Canada, we think of ourselves as fairly young country, but there are some areas of our country where there are, hundreds of years old homes that were built much differently. And so, some of those can be more complex. So that can impact the cost. And then also if you've got a crawl space installed, installing the membrane takes a lot of time. And so that also can change the price.
Wonderful. All right, here's another great question. I have a sump pump and bathroom in the basement and a gas fireplace on the main floor. We've tried to put a new lid on the sump pump, but the radon levels are still around 400, and that is with the basement open, windows open a bit. In the winter, I need to close the windows and radon levels will increase. Now I'm concerned about carbon monoxide. Should I install a radon mitigation system?
Um,
So I think she's just gotten nervous because you're talking about the potential for backdrafting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I certainly would. I mean, if the radon levels look like they're sustaining high, and so I would install a radon mitigation system. And part of the standard, so if you hire somebody who is CNRPP certified and they're following the CGSB standard, they will take time to seal. And then in addition, they will do a backdrafting test as part of the installation. So you will have information about that. They can do it with the system running as well as with the system not running, and can give you some of that information on whether other systems are creating a problem.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Okay, that brings it to the end of the questions that I am seeing for the moment.
Yeah, so I'll just fill in one other question that I did get from a person before, from a verbal conversation yesterday that I was having, was trying to decide between somebody who's non-certified and somebody who is certified when they, were sure they knew exactly what to do and that they were reading the standard. And, this is tricky to make these decisions as consumers. It's, all of our responsibility to do a little bit of discussion and research. Um, and so you need to hire somebody that you're comfortable with. But there certainly is training that goes into a mitigation system. I would, ask some of those questions that we had on the screen from both uncertified and certified professionals. I would also make sure that maybe some references or some pictures to see what type of systems. But some of these questions that we've given, we're talking about some exact things that we've asked here. What are you sealing? How are you deciding what fan to use? So that's a really good question because that'll differentiate somebody who's following the standard from somebody else. If they are deciding which fan to use, they should be doing some calculations and explaining there should be some testing and some drilling some holes in your floor to do some pressure measurements for the install and doing a design of the system. So that would be helpful.
Um, okay, a couple of other questions coming in, and they're both about measuring radon. But the first one here is really important to understand about mitigation. So they say, can you use your meter by testing different rooms to locate higher levels and thereby find sources of radon?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a common question. People often think that. Now, radon is a gas, so it moves throughout a building, and the devices that we have take time to measure. So there are sniffers out there. So they're a different type of device that aren't commonly available on the market that some of our professionals will do. And sometimes they will use them to help them with unusual situations or whatever, and give shorter testing times. But in general, my answer is no. You can't find the radon and sort of figure out where it's coming from. And then there's two reasons why when we mitigate a home, the ideal is to mitigate the entire footprint because we don't want to just get it to below 200. We want to get it to as low as possible. And so as Aaron talked about, that as the radon increases, the risk increases. And so really, we want to get it down to as low a risk as possible if you're going to mitigate. So that would be mitigating the entire footprint, not just sort of some local areas.
Wonderful. And I'll just chime in because there's another question, which is, does the Air Things give you, the Carentium Home, give you an actual real-time radon reading? And no, it's an average of the past, like the short-term averages of the last 24 hours. So you can't I, like Pam just said, you're not using it to sniff out the gas, if you will. And no matter what device you're using, whether it's an electronic monitor or one of the little passive devices that you send back to the lab, it is very important to test for that 3 month duration because radon levels do go up and down day to day, week to week. So you really want to measure for long enough to get a good indication of what your average radon level is. Health Canada's recommendation is the 3 months. So someone has a question about radon in water. Is radon in water a concern for people with wells?
It may be, but our first priority would be to test the radon in your air, and because it's the inhalation of radon that is the health risk. And so, if you have radon in your well system, and you use that water for showering or washing your clothes or dishwasher or whatever, it moves the water around quite quickly and then it aerates the radon. And so our first step would be to test. So just like the basic guidance of testing your home, in the lowest level where you spend 4 hours a day or more, I would certainly follow that guidance. And then if your levels are above 200, we would first mitigate the radon coming from beneath your house from the air. And then if the levels are still high, then you may want to test the water, the radon level in your water and look at mitigating. But if it's in your well, then it's probably in the ground. And so you want to mitigate that first. Yeah. And then we can provide some additional information if you're looking at testing the radon in the water.
Great. Here's a great question. What do you do if after mitigation radon levels don't go down?
Yeah, really good question. And actually, that was something I meant to bring up earlier, that to make sure that you test after mitigation. So if you've got an electronic monitor, if you have a mitigation system installed, you'll want to reset it so that now it's gathering new information and it's not carrying the data back from when you've got it. If it's something that connects to your smartphone, then naturally you'll see that the data changes. But if it's Carentium, there is a reset button on it, so you do need to change that. But yeah, if you've hired a CNRPP professional, I certainly would go back to them, make sure you have conversations with them about, reach out. And don't hesitate to reach out. That's what they're there for, to provide service. Or if you've had a different company install it, go back to them and find out, ask questions about why it's not working. There are a couple quick things that you could, check for. So one is the fan typically is a plug-in fan. So I would just check and make sure it didn't get unplugged. And also it plugs into an electrical socket, and that socket would be connected to a fuse. So then if it's plugged in and it's still not, then make sure that electric is turned on. There also could be issues if there's something blocking the discharge side of the pipe. So if your pipe goes up and out the side of the house, check to see if there's been something lean up against or changed at that discharge point to make sure that it's not blocked. If it's on the roof, you may want to hire the contractor to just double check that as well. But that is part of what the monitor for the fan is. So there should be some evidence that the fan is working. That YouTube manometer that's on there, if it's perfectly level, then that means there's a problem. It should be off center. So there's a YouTube and the liquid in that YouTube should be different at different levels on either side. Now, mine in my mitigation system in my house is very slightly off center. So it can range from quite a bit at different levels to just a little bit different levels, but you can usually tell that it's not level. So that would give you some indication that there's no air moving through it. So either the fan isn't working or there's some blockage in the system. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know, Erin, if you have anything to add to that
Yeah,
one.
I'll just add that most of, or at least very many of our mitigation professionals do guarantee that your level will be certainly below the guideline level. Generally, most of them, I think, say it will be under 100. They each have their own personal level of where, like what they might guarantee, but these are very effective systems. I think occasionally you get a house that they call them, a nightmare house or something. It's really tricky. We have chat groups for them to consult with each other in those cases. But those are by and large rare. Generally, these systems, if are very effective. And if you live in a halfway normal house, then there should be no concern of it not working for you. And yeah, this would just be yet another reason to go with a certified professional. As part of our 100 Test Kit Challenge program, sometimes I meet people, through their data, and I go, wait a second, you say you have a mitigation system, but your level is this high. Who did your mitigate? And they reach out to their senior professional after, a couple of years. Sometimes things have changed. Just like your radon levels can fluctuate, they still will fluctuate after you have a mitigation system. So I've heard a few stories over the last few years where people reached back out and the professional came back and they made the adjustments that were necessary. So continued monitoring is important, but that's one of the advantages of going with a certified professional. Okay, the last open question at the moment, Pam, is does opening windows help with levels?
Ah, that's a good question. So it can. And I think earlier someone mentioned that they had opened a basement window. And so if you open a basement window, it can provide airflow. And that's sort of why when you test for radon, we often say, hey, test during a season when your windows are closed because windows can be a good ventilation. But there is a phenomenon that if you crack open a window up in the upper part of your home, so the technical term is there's like a neutral pressure plane somewhere in your home and it's invisible. You can't tell where it is, but it's this phenomenon where it changes how the air moves in and out of your house. So if you happen to open a window on an upper part of your house and you don't have any other windows open, it could actually increase the amount of radon that's coming in. So it's possible that you could end up providing a greater stack effect if you just kind of crack open one window up above in the upper area of a house. So, most of the time, if you open your windows in the area, it could, but just a caution that that could create a situation where it's drawing more radon in.
Okay, I don't see any new questions open at the moment. Oh, how many years of high? Oh, whoa, they're coming in. How many years of high level exposure before it becomes a risk?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we are so there is data emerging, and I will say that Erin and I are here to talk about radon reduction and aren't the health experts. Often when we do launch our programs, we include a health professional, epidemiologist, or somebody that can help answer some of those questions. But yeah. So I would say that the data that we have shows that the greater the risk increases, or sorry, the greater the amount of radon tied with the duration can increase the risk. And then the other fact that we know is that it does take some amount of years before being exposed to radon that can start a lung cancer, can cause lung cancer. So, there's yeah, there's different, so we won't get too specific or answer too specifically, but there is definitely a latency period where you don't see the risk until there is a cancer initiation. Health Canada has put a guideline of 1 year in place as their sort of actionable items, because under their recommendation, they, it's not an urgent thing that you need to move out of your house for or get out of the house for, but that you do have some time because it's a chronic exposure risk, which means it's, an over the time risk.
Okay, great. Someone says, I see one radon professional in Kingston offers a DIY mitigation system. Is this really worthwhile, or do you get what you pay for?
Yeah, I would assume you get what you pay for. Yeah. Yeah, a DUI doesn't take into a consideration that the fan needs to fit your home. And that there's, other components in your home that needs to be sealed and things like that.
Yeah. And just a little bit more on the windows. So the person who had their windows open in the summer, the radon levels seem to drop. Often windows are open on the main floor as well. And if they just open a window on the main floor, will that potentially cause radon levels to increase? I didn't know this bit. Very helpful. So yeah, it all depends on your house, how tall your house is, the winds, the weather outside, the temperature inside. But yeah, the idea is that it's kind of like blowing over a straw. It's the Venturi effect, the stack effect. So if you just open a window at the very top of your house, you could cause like more airflow out and more airflow up through your house, which is kind of like sucking more on your basement floor. This is all very small amounts of pressure. It's not something that you really like that we notice with our human senses, unless you're trying to light a fire, as my colleague who's also here in Quebec always mentions. Anyone who heats their house with wood, especially if they have a something in the basement that they're trying to light, then you know all about stack effect because you always have to open a window if you're going to get your fire to light. Here's another question for you, Pam. Again, we're on health effects, which we do have an epidemiologist colleague who is specializes in this. But are there any symptoms of high exposure, for example, coughing, wheezing, or congestion?
Yeah, so I will affirm we are going to do a couple other webinars in November. And so I think we'll add some of these questions to that. We will share out those links for those future webinars as well. But I mean, I will just comment on that because we do know that the causal link of radon exposure is to lung cancer. And unfortunately, that's one of the challenges, and that's why we are so focused on prevention when we're talking about lung cancer, is the symptoms often don't come out until this cancer has progressed. So you may not have any symptoms until things have become the cancer has progressed. And so yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Pam. Okay, I'm out of questions again.
Okay, well, I think it's probably a good time to do a couple announcements. So I did want to share out a couple things, a couple other things that we're doing before we go. So we do have a contest that we're running. So we really appreciate your time today and that you're curious to learn more about radon. And we want to engage you in helping us share this information out. So if you tell somebody somehow about what you've learned here today, then tell us about it. And you can do that by entering this November contest. So if you were playing on the word no, and the fact that November is our Radon Action Month, so if you go to november.ca, then you'll find this webpage, or you can scan the QR code on the screen and enter the contest. So it's basically tell what you know, and then you can enter a contest for prizes. So we've got some fun prizes, some gift cards, Fitbit, a paddleboard, KitchenAid stand mixer. So feel free to enter that contest. And then we also have a radon game. So this is an easy way you can share out the radon game, tell others about it. It's a fun game that you can play to learn a little bit more about radon. And so you can kind of wander around this little virtual community and it'll ask you questions about should this building or should this building be tested for radon? And it's kind of a fun way to learn a little bit about more about radon. So you can check those resources out and learn a little bit more about radon and have fun and yeah, and possibly even win. So that would be great. Good.
Great.
And so, yeah, I think that's it. We are, here, so you can certainly reach out to us and get in contact with us at take action at radon.ca is our website. Our email is at info@takeactiononradon.ca. So check that out and you can find ways to communicate with us if you do have additional questions. We'll have more webinars coming up. So we will, send you out information. I think we did send you out information about some of our upcoming webinars as well. And so you can join us on those as well as they're coming up. But I've got the details here on the screen. So for those that are using the Corentium monitors, you may want to join in with the library patron webinar. There's programs across the country where they lend out monitors. And so we're doing a webinar for patrons. And then also we're doing a webinar to talk about radon and smoking, the contribution. So that'll certainly be more of a health focus. So if you've got some of those health questions, that might be a great one to join us in. And then one other little fun fact. So we are Radon, November is our Radon Action Month. So we're trying to promote more awareness there. And so you can check out our light up events happening across the country. So we are still waiting for some of our cities to confirm, but last year we did this and had them light up for purple. So if you're in an area where one of these events are, you might want to check in and see on November 27th if it is purple. All right. Well, thanks for all of you for joining us. Thanks, Erin, for helping with this session and answering questions. And we are really thrilled that you are wanting to learn more about radon.
Great. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.